So my name is Adam Harris. I'm the founder CEO of As I Am, a national autism charity working to bring about an autism friendly Ireland. I'm delighted to be here in IT Sligo today, where we're going to talk a little bit about how IT Sligo can go on the journey towards becoming an inclusive, accepting environment for all autistic students.
Okay, great. So tell us, if you were going to sum up autism to someone who never doesn't really understand it, could you sum that up to us?
So the definition of autism, it's a lifelong developmental condition which relates to how people interact and communicate with others and how we experience the world around us. It's a little bit different though in that I think the definition of autism only gets us so far because it's still hard to imagine what it's actually like to stand in the shoes of an autistic person. Fundamentally, autistic people see the world and experience the world in a way that's different to people who are not autistic. This may mean people communicate differently. It may mean that people experience the environment in a very different way. It can be oversensitive or undersensitive, and it means people may understand social situations and think in a different way to people who are not autistic. That means some things can be more challenging in day-to-day life because you're in a minority, you're seeing the world in a very different way to how most people do, but it can also mean there's a lot of positives as well. So we know that autistic people think differently. We know that we have special interests, things we can learn everything about and become experts in. We know that black and white thinking can be challenging in some aspects of life, but it can also mean autistic people are extremely loyal and extremely honest. So autism is a spectrum. That means it affects no two people in exactly the same way. It means some autistic people might need a lifelong support. It might mean some other autistic people live very independently in the community. So I myself am autistic, and as are 1 in 65 people in society in Ireland. What's important to realise is in day-to-day life, autistic people experience accessibility barriers and because of how the world works. And we try and bring these together under 4 key headings. Communication. How do we give information? How do we present it? How do we allow people to process information? How do we listen to people who communicate differently? Predictability. How do we help people know what to expect, what's expected of them, what will happen? The sensory environment. How does that work? How can autistic people cope in environments that can be very overwhelming? And the fourth one, which might sound a little bit kind of fluffy, but it's very valid, is the judgment and attitude of other people. We know a lot of autistic people really aren't accepted, aren't understood, because they're living with an invisible condition that people don't understand why someone might do things a little bit differently. So as a result, it's really important as a society that we holistically look at how we can autism-proof our communities, our public services and our businesses. So we have a situation now where 86% of autistic people attend mainstream school. But if you do the maths on it, 2004, 2018, 14 years. So what we're seeing is a generation of autistic people who've been mainstreamed through the education system, primary and secondary, reaching a stage where people may be considering tertiary education. And tertiary education, third level, can be a real gateway of opportunity for autistic people. It's an opportunity to focus and study on the things you're interested in, to make friends through maybe societies that are built around your interests, and to become more independent. We need the adult world to play as much of a role as the school and the child world in building an autism-friendly community. But we know anecdotally there's a lot of barriers to success at third level for autistic people. It's a big transition from the very supported world of secondary school to the more independent world at third level. There's a reality that, you're going to a new stage of your life and there's often less supports in doing that. There is the reality of working out what you want to do, and often it's not the academics that can be the challenge. It may be the journey to college every day. It may be getting to know people. It may be that you have to live independently from home for the first time. Or maybe you do really well in college, but it doesn't translate into a job for you at the end. So a number of years ago, we decided that something needed to be done to make sure that autistic people had equality of access to third level, but could really use it as a springboard into adult life. So working with Dublin City University, we developed a framework for universities and third level institutions to become autism friendly. And what we did is we established 8 principles that any institution could adopt, develop an action plan to make real in their campus, and as a result access designation. So IT Sligo today has indicated that it wants to be the first institute of technology in Ireland and indeed in the world to adopt our principles, and we think that's something that's really, really positive. And what is important is it moves the idea of autism support out of any one specific office in an organisation and actually helps everybody from students to student societies and services to academics to the ancillary services in a campus realise that they all have a role to play, from transitioning into university to accessing employment, to make sure autistic people can thrive and reach their own personal potential. And we're conscious that, you know, institutions of education are all different, and the changes that are made need to be aligned with the culture and needs of that organisation. But there's things that can be done for the sensory environment. So for example, we would recommend that campuses do a sensory audit, where working with autistic people using the campus, they identify possible aspects of the environment are challenging. Maybe there's lots of places that are very crowded that students have to go through. Maybe students really want to join a student society, but the day that they do that, it's Freshers Week and it's crazy. Maybe a person can cope most of the time, but sometimes things become too much and the person needs to be able to get somewhere quiet. So we would recommend there be changes to the sensory environment, such as providing a quiet room, quiet times, such as ensuring that a person can maybe make their own adaptations that they might need to get through the day, and that might look different for every person. In terms of academic support, what might be really important is training lecturers and academic staff to understand how they can adjust their pedagogy to meet the needs of students who are autistic. In the context of employment, it might be ensuring that autistic people get the good work experience placements, get the good opportunities after college, because maybe a person is well able to do the job, but on paper that may not play out, or in an interview situation that may play out. It's also about educating other students. Let's be honest, you spend more time during your third level education with your peers than with your academics. There's so much good work being done educating about mental health, sexuality, other aspects of diversity. It's vital that autism is part of that mainstream reality, because we have a situation that there's a huge stigma talking about autism. In our research underpinning this project, 50% of students never told anybody on campus that they were autistic. So really important is that we break that stigma, that we ensure there's support there for people to access, and then we enable a person to take the path that will allow them to reach their personal potential. Yeah, I think fundamentally the name of our organisation is As I Am, because it's all about is accepting people as they are. And really that isn't hard, but the problem is when we meet people with other disabilities, maybe we can physically see a difference and people begin to think. Unfortunately for those of us who are autistic, we may need to do things in a very different way, but may not look different at all. So a person communicates different, reads situations a bit different, gets overwhelmed in certain situations. But instead of a person maybe being supported, we jump to the conclusions and just say, that person's weird, that person's odd, that person's being difficult. So it's just about accepting that there will be 1 in 65 students perhaps who are very different, who do things in a different way, and realising that that's actually okay, that it's an acceptable way of operating and a way of being. I think what's important to realise is that day to day, organisationally there's things that can be done, but actually as human beings we can do things as well. And for us to bring that down to 3 key messages: use clean language, because often in Ireland we talk in riddles and that can be very confusing for autistic people. Be patient, because sometimes we need more time to process, or we need to do things in a slightly different way. And the third one, don't judge, because if we actually treated every person as if they were autistic, if we gave everybody the benefit of being allowed to be themselves and accepting the person for that, well then really we'd go a long way to building a more autism friendly society.